There you have it, Florida. The teal blue water of Tempest Bay, the sandy shores of South Miami, and the menacing Everglades Gators, as well as the massive Orlando theme parks. Florida sounds like a place you might want to visit. And that's what I did 6 months ago. Sunglasses on, traveling down from Orlando to Miami, I ordered a jalapeno taco from Cocina de Miguel, quite welcoming food truck near Fort Lauderdale in South Florida. And tour guides in Florida mentioned this quite stereotypical rule of when you don't know what to eat, ask a guy who speaks Spanish and you'll find. So today's subject, however, will not be on how the Latinos conquered the restoration industry of this massive state, but rather how they became the only Republican-supporting minority in the entire country. And I saw that as soon as I was discussing the spiciness of my dish with Miguel, the owner of this restaurant. I saw a proudly displayed Make America Great Again flag hanging at the back of the truck. And this Miguel, whose real name was Andres, I think, but he named his restaurant Miguel because it sounded better, asked me who I was supporting. I'm French. I'm not American. I'm not really supporting anyone. But he seemed really, really involved in politics, and especially Donald Trump's politics. He supported the wall, who was supposed to keep his family from joining him in the U.S. But it certainly seems quite paradoxical, but Idris's really conflicting stances piqued my curiosity to the point where I decided to embark in the amazing journey and quite controversial of Floridian politics. So here's what I found. Firstly, since back in 2000, the year 2000, Florida was considered a major swing state. So in the U.S., during the election, the swing state is a state that determines the outcome of the election because both the parties have really close numbers there. In the year 2000, for example, only 537 votes separated the winner, George W. Bush, from his Democrat opponent, Al Gore. So at that time, Florida acted as a bellwether state, successfully predicting the outcome of the election. They voted for Bush back in 2004, for Obama in 2008 and 2012. He won both times. And in 2016, they voted Trump. Until 2020, when they voted Trump and Joe Biden was elected. So this weird shift continued in 2022 at the governor election when Ron DeSantis won in a landslide against the Democrats. All the seats in the Floridian Senate and House of Representatives have been conquered by Republican candidates. And you now get it. Florida has turned scarlet red. So what happened? To start, I wanted to do a little disclaimer here. I know Florida has never, ever been as liberal as other coastal states, such as California or New York. But what we're really trying to see here is not the absolute political direction, but rather its evolution compared to the whole country. On this chart, we see the U.S. presidential election margins between the U.S. and Florida, and you see that the difference isn't so big until 2020, where about 8% separated the two entities. So what changed are many factors, including an important one about the minority, the Latinos. A really interesting article investigation made by Vox explained two reasons. The first is the overall shift in the population. To explain this, we'll use the example of the Miami-Dade country. It is by far the most populous and with the highest GDP county in the entire state. And it's 70% Latino. However, those Latinos haven't been as liberal as they've been before. Back in the 90s, they voted massively Democrat. But now they've supported Ron DeSantis and his anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigration, and anti-abortion policies. Why? Well, Latinos from Florida aren't the same Latinos as in California or Arizona. Those are mainly Mexican. The Mexicans are living near the border and are really close to the immigration in the U.S. Republican immigration policies and the problems that are happening near the border do not concern Floridan Latinos as much as they concern American Mexicans living near the border. Another reason that explains this huge Republican support from the Latinos are their origins. You see, Latinos from Florida come from Cuba, Venezuela, or Colombia. They have immigrated to the U.S. at the end of the 20th century, and since then, they have lived a great life. Having suffered from the socialist and populist regimes of these countries back in the 20th century, these Latinos knows the price of socialism, and they're really, really easy to convince, especially when the Republicans make ads in Spanish language portraying the Democrats are as the populist leaders, the same populist leaders that basically destroyed South and Central American economy. And of course, you have the influence of Christianity. 17% of this 17% of Latino population is massively Christian, and it's aging to the first population, so more inclined to support conservative policies. But the biggest reason is really harder to quantify. It is mainly the disinformation that was spread by the Republican Party, not in English, but in the Spanish language. The former mayor of the city of Hialeah in the Miami-Dade County said at a radio show that many local radio channels were portraying Joe Biden as anti-Christian in Spanish. And a lot of these Latinos do speak English, but not as well as they speak Spanish. And of course, they'll be more attracted to Spanish content early on. So the idea of, in a way, putting ads in Spanish is a way for the Republicans to really dig the grave of the Democrats. But these ads need to come from somewhere. So this brings us to the second reason how weak the Democratic Party is grown and how strong the Republican Party of Florida. See here the chart of Florida State Party's expenditures from 2021 to 2023. And here you see this amazing spend in party ads from the Republican Party. As you can see, this was at the heights of the governor election in 2022 where Ron DeSantis was elected. Well, you see how weak the Florida Democratic Party has grown and how little they invest in their campaigns. Now, this lack of investment can be explained by, firstly, a shortage of Democratic candidates that are popular enough to pretend to get elected, and a major focus on other states from the Democrat Party, for example, Pennsylvania or Virginia. But what is really weird is the influence that Donald Trump had on Florida. You see, since 2020, Trump has become an official full-time Florida resident, and he has made meetings, parties, golf tournaments in the area. His presence in Florida has totally shifted the interest in politics to a really focus support not on only the Republicans, but especially Donald Trump. So there are many other reasons that could explain this weird political shift, but it follows the same, really resembles the pattern that happened in Texas in the 80s when Ronald Reagan was elected. Since then, only the Republicans have won Texas at every presidential election. So no one knows what will happen in Florida. No one knows when it will switch back and if it ever will. But this growing support for Trump in 2024 indicates a shift in American politics and almost a upheaval. Minorities, such as the Latino minority, are becoming more conservative in the majority, and the majority is becoming more liberal. In the midst of all this, the polarization reaches heights never seen before. This was only in 2014, almost 10 years ago. Since then, it has grown even worse. Nothing between the Democrats and the Republicans is intertwined now. Two distinct parts of the country opposing each other, and sometimes in the same states, such as in Florida. So I don't know if the shift in Freudian politics is in a way to predict a funest outcome for America. But what remains is that the polarization often happens in small communities where, instead of the whole country, where some individuals, as Latinos, decide to really lean right, whereas other little communities, such as the Black Americans, decide to lean left. Thank you very much.